Order. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Housing, Communities and Local Government Select Committee. I am Florence Eshalomi. I'm the chair of the committee. Can I get my committee colleagues to introduce themselves, please?
I'm Chris Curtis. I'm Labour MP for Milton Keynes North.
Good morning, Andrew Lewin, MP for Welland Hatfield.
We have a guest from the Treasury Select Committee joining us.
Hello, I'm Yuan Yang. I'm the Labour MP for Early and Woodley constituency.
Will Forster, Liberal Democrat, Member for Parliament for Woking.
Lee Dillon, Liberal Democrat, Member for Newbury.
Lewis Coffey and Broxbourne, and I'm a leaseholder as well.
Agam Hendrick, Conservative Member, Parliament South West Hertfordshire.
Sorry, can I also declare that I live on a estate managed by Rendall and Rittner.
Thank you. Can I get our guests to introduce themselves, please?
First of all, if I may, thank you very much for the invitation to the committee. My name is Martin King, and I'm Managing Director of FirstPort.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Catherine Riva, and I'm the co-CEO of Rendall and Rittner.
And good morning, I'm Andrew Bulmer, Chief Exec of the Property Institute, a professional body with 7,000 individual members and approximately 360 firms.
Great, thank you. Today's session is looking at managing companies, and we've had this in the diary for some time, and obviously everyone knows that the government have now published the draft Common Hold and Leasehold Reform Bill, and we will be launching a pre-leg scrutiny from this committee, and one of the areas we will look at will be managing agents. But it's a good opportunity for us to discuss with you all this morning in terms of some of those issues and key areas which we as members of Parliament continue to be contacted about. Just to thank FirstPort for their regular updates to the committee. They have appeared before, and they also appeared before a group of cross-party MPs looking at leasehold issues. Just coming to FirstPort, Martin, in the first instance, since you last appeared before the committee, unfortunately there have been more cases of FirstPorts in the news, and again I'd say, you know, from colleagues right across the House, there's a big issue that we see in our inbox. Why do you think FirstPort seems to have such a bad reputation?
It's obviously a question, so thank you for that. Thank you firstly for the question, and it's something that we obviously ask ourselves. Why is it that FirstPort has such a focus throughout the industry, and obviously at the Houses of Parliament and through residents? And for us, we in the past haven't done a good job, and I think as an industry it was certainly a challenging industry. And as we've discussed, whenever I've met anyone before, purposefully for me coming in 2 years ago is to turn that round. Now, perception is something we are now in. What is the perception of FirstPort? We've deliberately, and we promised to, release our quarterly results every quarter, our stats, and they are improving substantially. And so that moves us into a position of then convincing and moving the belief that FirstPort is very bad. Now, I know inboxes, because I obviously am aware of inboxes, still have complaints about FirstPort on a variety of different areas, that it does with the whole industry. But this time last year, we had 395 MP communications in place.
Would you say that were maybe government, ministers, parliamentarians, you're being singled out? Or
So
would you say...
Not in a... So I think there is a focus on FirstPort, and I think we are the largest independent company in the industry. So I understand that focus. What I need to do is make sure that the changes are implemented. As I mentioned, the MP contacts that we have from this time last year have gone from 395 down to 93. The number of complaints that we've received have gone down by 70,000. So I know the work that I promised I would do, that FirstPort would put in place, is starting to pay off for us and improving for our residents. Now, will we get it right all the time? Of course not, and I'm absolutely sure there will be a number of examples where FirstPort hasn't got it right, and I am sorry that we still get things wrong for some of our residents. But our complaint rate, I think the last time I was here, was 1.1, 1.2 per thousand, and as of today sits at 0.77, which is a vast improvement compared to, well, there's not many stats out there that actually showcase what complaints per thousand are. But for a service industry to get down to that level is good.
What material changes would you say FirstPort have made to address that and bring those figures down?
So, as I discussed before, for me, practically, I need to get after things that help our residents communicate with us, that we're perceived as more transparent and seen as more transparent, that they understand what the role of the managing agent is in this complex industry. So communication for us has improved. We've now got 78% of our customers on My Home, and that makes a big difference because a customer can then go on, they can self-serve, they can see documents, and they are doing that. Average in a quarter, we've got about 100,000 log-ons to that website, and that didn't exist 18 months ago. So being able to communicate, we've produced documents which we've shared that explain what the service charge is for, what our role is on that site. Our inspections of sites per quarter now stand at 20,000 to 23,000 every quarter where we're out on site, we're inspecting sites. So being a lot more visible through communication, through online, through being on site, dealing with customer queries and complaints much quicker than ever before. 70% of our queries are now answered first time. And if you remember last time I was here in June, I mentioned that we were bringing and onshoring our customer call centre. And again, that has worked well in the fact that we're able to train individuals to a higher standard, to improve the service of the call when it's made, and resolve the issue that that customer has a lot quicker and first time. So second time calls have reduced by about 15%, which is a big difference. So it's not perfect, we still have work to do. I know there are still issues out there, but as you've seen, we have lent into those issues. We have liaised and met with MPs and residents. We've done, I think on the last quarter, I think we reported about 6,300 resident meetings, and that is paying back to the residents and ensuring that we're communicating with them.
Thank you. Well,
thank you, Florence. Martin, you've highlighted you feel you've become a success because you're having less issues raised with you. Have you assessed the slow period of time you take to respond if that's depressing demand and contact? I know one issue I raised with yourself at FirstPort in July 2025 in Florence Court in Woking. You responded to me in January this year, as in last month, and I hear that from other colleagues and I hear that from constituents. If you are ignoring MP correspondence, if you're ignoring constituent correspondence, whether it's in Woking or across the country, surely that's going to mean you're not going to get as much contact from people. You shouldn't then celebrate that success.
I don't think so. We don't, as I've said, we get things wrong, and if we're not replying, and I'll look into that, if we're not replying quick enough, actually what will happen is we'll get more communication from residents. If we're not responding to them first or second time, or they're not satisfied with that response, they do get back in touch with us. So I understand the point that if we're just ignoring people, then they'll go away. That doesn't happen. I think the whole industry would agree with that if we're not dealing with issues that our customers have and our residents have in a timely manner, and the figures, we've got all the figures, we can obviously measure them all, that we're answering calls quicker, we're resolving issues quicker, we're communicating with people quicker, that makes a big difference. And I've seen that drop-off, that 70,000 drop-off of customer queries is not because we're ignoring people, it's because we're going out, we're meeting them, and we're improving our service, which is what I said we would do. Caveated with, we're still not perfect. We are still working hard to get it as right as we possibly can. And that is, as I said 2 years ago, is a main aim of mine for those residents as the industry changes, as regulation changes, and the role of the managing agent changes.
right.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. King, for coming before parliamentarians again when we spoke again around a year ago about the slowness of replies in various estates across my constituency in Reading. And you mentioned that the first response time and the end-to-end resolution time has reduced by these proportions. Do you have numbers for how many or what proportion of complaints take more than 1 month or more than 6 months, etc., to adjudicate? Because that is what I'm finding over and over again with my residents.
Yeah, so we can break that down for you. I can send that separately in a breakdown if that would be useful. It's something I'm obviously very keen that we measure because obviously it's important, reducing the number of complaints, whether it's a service level complaint or it's a query. So putting in place all the elements of an online service and putting onshoring, which is not an easy thing to do. We've done that in the last 12 months to get all of that done in order to have a better service for our residents. We can supply those stats to you. because we measure them as they go through the different stages, and what's solved at what point.
Thank you. Again.
Thank you. Martin, sorry to focus on you for the moment. I've got a constituent, 92 years old, Maria Cook, who lives in Penn Place. She's had water leaking into her flat from a flat above for over a year. Your company manages the flat. You failed to respond to several of her emails. Mould is now growing. She suffers from poor mobility. She's always in the flat. This is a potential health risk. What do I say to her?
So it'd be, I mean, obviously, I apologise to her that we have in some way not got that right. I don't know the details.
She only contacted me on Saturday, so this was very timely.
And sure. So it would be good to understand what that is, and I can look into it and then get back to you. So I think, as you know, and as I've met a number of you in the past, that if there is an issue that comes directly to me, and it makes it much quicker for us to solve things if there is a particular constituent issue. So please do share that with me, and we'll look into it.
In whom, in Manchester, residents experience collapsing ceilings, leaks and rats entering the building, while service charges have more than doubled. The local MP said in December that no meaningful progress had been made despite contacting you over 13 times. What does this say about your company's attitude to its residents and their elected representatives?
So, again, please do pass that particular example on. I'll look into why that has occurred. If whatever has occurred, we can then dissect what that is. Obviously, we don't want that tonight. That's not what we are in this business for. It is a hard business, but 95% of our portfolio is obviously well managed and is static with us for a period of time. But we do get things wrong. I don't know what the example is of that or what has gone wrong. But if you supply that to me, I will look into it and get back to you as soon as we can.
Let me share the love, Catherine. Your company manages a tower block in Birmingham where they were without running water for days. Are those residents getting value for money on their service charge?
We constantly strive to deliver value for money. We do appreciate that sometimes there are issues that I would like to sincerely apologise for. I believe in that instance we were waiting for a part, but I'm more than happy to investigate further and come back to you.
Thank you. For both you, Martin and Catherine, how are you assessing the needs of vulnerable residents in your assessment when you're having to deal with managing and servicing of their property?
First, so for each of our properties that we manage, we work very closely with the residents. We are asking for residents to let us know if they have any vulnerabilities that we need to be aware of, to make sure that we can manage the building as a whole properly. So that can be recorded on the systems that we have. And also we liaise with other partners and stakeholders. So, for example, if there are housing association residents, we would be liaising with our housing association partners so that we can also gain an understanding of their residents within the building. It's really important that we have a holistic overview so that we can adapt our services.
Martin?
A very similar answer, and it tends to be an industry thing. So a residence pack that we would understand who lives there, if there are any special requirements that we need to take into account, if the building needs to be evacuated, etc. So we're very similar to Catherine. We will go through that process and understand systematically. Something we have focused on an awful lot is making sure that our health and safety and building safety teams are much larger, and we've been deliberately hiring senior people into that to make sure that as legislation comes through and regulation comes through, those buildings are understood more than they were in the past and dealt with quicker than they have been in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you. Luke.
Yeah, thank you. Martin, just picking up there around building safety regulations, you manage a scheme in my constituency where the South Tower lift has been out of action for 22 months. It was promised that work was going to be completed by Christmas. Then by the 12th of January, as of yesterday, it still hadn't started. And FirstPort was saying that because the building's greater than 18 metres high, it must comply with the 2022 building safety regulations. The resident there, and I think it's important you hear it in their own words, Bailey has not suddenly grown in height. It's been greater than 18 metres since it was built in 2011. And the new regulations have been in existence since 2022, well before this project was ever conceived. So how have FirstPort's major project team been so inept as to only discover at this stage that any works now need to comply with these regulations?
I'll need to look into that specifically, but we take, obviously, building safety extremely seriously. So I'll need to look into why there is a delay, what that delay is on that particular lift and that particular building.
Well, it's more about the approach here, Martin. It's not that individual lift. It's that at the point of committing to do the work, you're then going back and going, actually, it's over 18 metres, it needs to comply with these regulations, when your team should have known that all along.
So I'll have to look into that example, but it's not a systematic approach to everything that we do. If we're unsure about something on a building, we will go away and check that. We'll make sure surveyors are there to look at it. It's something, obviously, that we take incredibly seriously. If it delays aspects of the major works, then it may delay things, but we need to get it right for the safety of the building and the people in that building and the residents.
And the residents accept that you need to get it right. But why haven't you got that basic information at the start of a project? And then commit to residents for something that you're not going to be able to hold that standard to, which further erodes trust in your organisation.
Yeah. So if we get it wrong or we don't know the answer to something, we need to go away and check that. I'll have to look into that particular aspect. But overarchingly, if there's some information that we need, or we're missing, or we're unsure about something, or something that may have been fact for a period of time actually turns out not to be, we need to look into that and why. So it can take time, and I know that is frustrating to residents, but we do try and communicate those delays over a period of time. But the key thing is that ultimately it's the building that is safe and the residents that are safe.
I mean, that lift being out of action resulted in one resident not being able to pass away in their own home because they didn't feel safe with the alternative provisions that were put in place. And
that is always obviously saddening, where if things don't go right or things are delayed, that has an effect on residents who live in their homes. It's obviously for us who work in it, it's a motivating factor to make sure that we can get things right. FirstPort has 350,000 homes, over 6,000 developments. So when we get a lift that is not working, or a development that needs to be looked at specially, in this example, then obviously we try to get it right more often than not. But when we do get it wrong, we will communicate that and move ahead as fast as we can.
Okay, just on that incident in December, Martin, you mentioned that if we provided more details, you'd look into that. I just wanted to know in terms of the communication teams at FirstPort, because that incident was all over BBC News. I appreciate you know, obviously FirstPort manages so many properties, appreciate staff, including management, have to have time off. We as parliamentarians have time off. But to see that you weren't aware of that was quite worrying.
So for me personally, yeah. So I think we have a large portfolio from Scotland all the way down, and if a lift is out somewhere in those particular regions, then if I know about it as first hand.
I think a lift and a leak, but this was collapsing ceilings, this was ongoing issues, so you would have thought something of that magnitude and it making the news would have been something that the comms team or PR team...
And the comms team will be, and the head of that region will be. As you know, we regionalised the business about 18 months ago now, so the reaction to incidents like this is now a lot quicker. So it is always regretful when we either fall behind on something or something happens that we end up in the press, like any of us in the industry when things go wrong. It's how we react to that. So the comms team will be aware, they'll liaise with the team in that particular region, and they'll both liaise with the press and obviously communicate with the residents as well. It's in our interest, obviously, and for the residents, that we solve these problems as fast as we possibly can.
No, for sure. Thank you. Just moving on to service charges. Lee and Lewis.
Yeah, thank you. So this is both to Martin and Catherine. So what were the average service charge and management fee increases for each of your organisations in 24-25?
24-25, they were tracking below inflation. When we reported previously to you, we had looked at a subset of our portfolio of around 350 clients. And we had compared that to the TPI index, which looked at the period 2019 to 2024. And our service charge increases as a whole were very much aligned to that evidence that was provided. We have subsequently taken a further look at a further subset of those 250 clients to see the impact of the current year's budgets that have just been agreed. And what we have seen is previously over that 5-year period, overall there was a 42% increase in service charges. Over the new 5-year period, including 2026, we have seen it as 40%, so there's actually been a reduction. And in the December budgets within that subset, we've seen a reduction of 1.3%, which obviously in real terms is higher than that. So looking at service charges as a whole is a key focus area for us to ensure that we are delivering value for money for our customers.
Okay, and then so what was the average increase for the organisation? What's the figure? In
that period, I'll need to double check the figure precisely, but I believe it was around 3%, 3.5%. But I will come back to you.
Thank you. Martin?
2.1% for us over that period of time, but very much and similar for the TPI. We were in a median in the industry.
And then just a follow-up to both of you. So within your management fees, how much has your profit margin changed year on year on management fees?
For us, it's relatively static. I think for management fees, with where we are at the moment, we rose by the 2.1%. So if the question is what margin on management fees?
Yeah. So what profit are you making on the management fees, margin of profit?
We'd have to check independently on what that actually is. But
we all do the same. What we have found, though, is that profit is certainly something that obviously that we need to achieve, but we are reinvesting significantly in driving service delivery. So profit is challenging because we are consistently reviewing about how we can improve service delivery. So it is an area of focus. We're hugely and ensuring that we can deliver good customer service is a key focus area for us.
Okay. The focus from residents and maybe some in the gallery and those listening in is around that lack of transparency of service charges and management fees, and then that lack of quality service delivery which they've paid for, and to high values. So I'm surprised that you came here today without having all of those type of answers on your fingertips, to be honest with you, because I think our constituents would expect to hear those type of answers from you today, and for you to be prepped that was the line of questioning we were taking. Just on service charges, Chair, just another example to bring this to life for the committee. Leaseholders had the 2024 year-end adjustment demand 7 months late, and it had an increase in there of £62,859, which was for the car park general maintenance. That's the line. There are 135 car parking spaces in that car park, so that equates to £465.62 per parking space. This is one of your schemes, Martin. The residents have said that some plastic bollards have been replaced, but there's not been any more work done in the car park, and there wasn't a Section 20 consultation. I mean, increasing fees by over £60,000 to manage a car park, does that sound reasonable or fair to you?
So again, I'd have to look into what those figures are, what site that is. I think we all agree service charge has gone up certainly over the last 5 years, and there are a number of reasons for that, whether it's utilities, whether it's maintenance, whether it's insurance. The management fee, which is what we work with, is a percentage of that, which for us is about 4.5%. So I'd have to look into why a car park and why that has gone up so much. I don't know the answer to that. I will check if you can supply that to me. I'll look into it. Thank you.
I think just on that, Martin and Catherine, you have a situation where time and time again residents do ask for transparency on that, I've got an email chain from a constituent as well where they've been asked to see where those managing costs are being applied to. Their current managing agent, they're in the process of moving to Rendall and Rittner. This constituent is asking why the £300 management fee, why their service charge will be increasing from £300 to £600 per month. So again, I think where residents are receiving a service, I think people will pay. The key area is around transparency. What are they paying for? Yep. And in terms of my colleague Lee asking why you don't have those charges, my understanding was that you were briefed by committee staff in terms of areas where we'd want to ask and question you this morning. So it is quite disappointing to see that you don't have those figures to hand. And if you're able to write to the committee afterwards, we would appreciate that.
I think, Chair, we're getting the same experience our residents get when they contact them.
And if I may, on service, especially on service charge, as you know, we produced what is a service charge. And even in some of the description today of what a service charge is that we charge, it's charging for the services by each development. So each development will have a list of different services that are then computed at the beginning of the year and then sent out. So being transparent and residents understanding what am I paying for, what services are being delivered to that particular development is obviously very important. And we produce that document, which we send out to everyone. We're changing the design of how we do billing so it's more transparent, that people can understand it. We've uploaded, I think we mentioned last time, over 10 million documents to the website that people can read to understand that. So understanding what services are provided, why costs have gone up considerably in service charge, or services provided, and why that is important to us as well, because obviously in the examples given today and elsewhere, there's still a misunderstanding of what a service charge is for and how it is computed and how that is then delivered to them. So it's something we're working hard at producing, which obviously we've still not perfected.
If I may just also add that communication is a key area of focus for us. When we wrote you previously, we explained that we'd rolled out a customer engagement platform which tracks and monitors communication so that we can report on response times. We'd also established a customer experience team. We've invested more in that, and we have now extended our operating hours. So Monday to Friday, we're working outside of normal working hours, and also on a Saturday, to make sure that we are more accessible to our customers. We're also launched a new initiative looking again at the communication that we send out. We are employing a specialist consultant to look at that, and we're also engaging with resident groups so that we can incorporate their feedback directly into that initiative.
We'll move on. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Martin, my first question is for you. And look, thank you for coming back to the committee and fronting up. That is important. I have to say, I think there is an astonishing mismatch from your opening comments about a service that is improving and doing well for a service business, I think you said at one point, and the stories we've heard from colleagues on behalf of residents today. But my focus is on transparency, which the Chair has already talked about. I'm keen to understand that since you were last in front of us in June, what steps you've been taking to be clearer with residents about where their money is going, and also whether you ask residents about whether they consider your service to be value for money.
Thank you very much for the question. So, first of all, if I may go backwards on the satisfaction, customer satisfaction, and what we are doing. We send out surveys. We ask people what they think of us. And this time last year, customer satisfaction on our portfolio stood about 45%. That is improved by 31%, so we're up to almost 70% customer satisfaction now. So it's obviously important. I understand, your point of there are lots of and a number of individual issues that we still need to deliver for our residents. I mean, we always will. We'll always get things wrong, and we'll always try and resolve them as quickly as we possibly can. But customer satisfaction is something that we're very keen on improving, obviously, and we measured that. We've been measuring it for the last 12 months. So in conjunction, in a combined format of if calls are going down by 70,000, if customer satisfaction has gone up by 31%, these are good statistics and prove that we're moving in the right direction. We have not got everything right, and I still am driving that forward to improve for all of your constituents and our residents and it is a work that I'm obviously taking very seriously. But when we look at the transparency of how well we're doing or where the issues are, obviously, as the Chair mentioned in the beginning, we publish those, we send them out, we send links out. Every quarter we publish our results of how many calls we're getting, how quickly we answer them, etc., etc. So we are being transparent. I think we are probably the most transparent company in regards to publishing its customer format and customer results than any other. So we've been doing that now for about 18 months and sending that information out. So if we need to do more, we will do more. We have a building out an improved comms team. We're sending our people to have resident meetings and surgeries, as well as we are improving our inspections on site as well. So engaging with our customers, making sure we are, as you say, fronting up into conversations, that we are publishing the results from every time that I've come and visited and met with you. We do that every time and share those results for everyone to see.
Thank you. Do you publish what questions you ask people to get to a score of customer satisfaction? Because I'm interested in that, and
Yeah.
just briefly, and then I will move on to the rest of the panel. I did ask whether you would consider asking customers if the question of do they consider FirstPort to be good value for money. Do you currently ask them that question?
So what we ask them is, what do you think of FirstPort? And give us a grade from 1 to 5. What we don't do, and we have seen others that are only tell us bad things, and we'd obviously want to know what the rest of our portfolio thinks about us across the board. So if we retain every year 95% of our portfolio, if we liaise and have conversations with customers that are satisfied, then obviously there's a 5%, which is in effect what we're talking about here today. How do we improve relationships with 5% of our portfolio and improve our service to that 5%? So sending out a customer survey of, are we 1 or are we 5? Where are we on your scale? And we are actually doing a whole portfolio. So the answer is yes, we will send that out. We are doing that. We're sending out a number of questions to the entire portfolio very shortly, and then we can gauge how well we're doing across the board. But in the process of improving a number of different services, we obviously need to know where we are and where we sit and what we need to focus on, which is what we've done.
Catherine, moving to you. So look, there have been a lot of questions directed to Martin and FirstPort, but they have committed to and are publishing quarterly service updates. My understanding is that your business is not doing that at the moment. Can you talk us through why you've made that decision, and are you looking to change it?
We would be more than happy to review that and actually undertake it. We actually seek customer feedback in a variety of ways. So that is through the senior management team being really hands-on, and by that I include myself and my co-CEO visiting customers, being part of residents' meetings to actually hear feedback directly. We do that in addition to surveys, because sometimes customers get, I think, survey fatigue, and you don't often get to the root cause of what the problem is. And so I think having direct conversations is hugely important as part of various ways of getting feedback. We also closely monitor, obviously, the complaints that we receive. The number of complaints that we receive as a proportion of the number of homes that we manage is around 1%, but I totally agree that is 1% too much. We know by the data that we're now getting from our customer experience team that the approximately 50% of the inquiries that we're getting are around financial matters, so service charges, but also maintenance issues. And that is where we're really targeting and driving service improvements. So one of those being looking at enhancing our communication style and getting feedback directly from customers to make sure that we evolve that in the right way and we're not presuming what it needs to look like.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Andrew, can I come to you, because we might have consensus breaking out here. So FirstPort are publishing quarterly data. Catherine has just told the panel that she'd be more than happy to do so. So in your role, would you consider making it mandatory for members to publish data, so that we as parliamentarians, but most importantly residents, can look at a consistent group of data and compare performance among providers?
That's a novel suggestion, and it's certainly one I would take away. I think we are on the cusp of finding out from government what will become mandatory in terms of supervision through possible designated professional bodies, or ideally a regulator. And I would say that the collation of that kind of information is something, if you mandate it, it would be easier to mandate it through a regulator. What we have done in the interim is we have created a customer satisfaction toolkit, which is in the final stages of pilot. It is voluntary for firms to take it and use it, and it will give them an insight into how their customers feel about them. A lot of the questions in that toolkit are cross-referenced to the social housing tenant satisfaction survey, so that you can benchmark private against social as well and get some consistency in there. So we have created a toolkit. We have not mandated it yet. I think we probably take a bar's rest while we wait for the Minister to announce his intentions as part of the hopeful additions to the draft bill. And then we would, if we are disappointed with what comes forward, then that's certainly something that we would consider.
But just on that, Andrew, would you not say, seeing the many complaints TPI would receive from different managing agents on the failings of different managing agents, this is something that the TPI should have been looking at, and it's almost saying that it's still in a voluntary stage? Does that in effect let off some of the managing agents in terms of the bad practice that we are seeing across many different managing agents? Would you not want to see more of a, because it's almost as if a carrot stick approach at the moment, where you have some, FirstPort publishing theirs, Rendall and Rittner saying they might look at it. It seems quite patchy across the sector, no?
So membership of the Property Institute is voluntary. Firms don't have to be a member. And you actually asked quite a long and extended question there, and I started to lose the thread of it at the end. Could I ask you to just rephrase it in a more cutting
if it's just
fashion?
So you've said that membership is voluntary.
Yep.
I'm hoping that, again, we will see more as we do our due diligence on the bill committee. I think managing agents will feature a lot in terms of the future of managing agents and regulation. I think that has to be, I've said it in the chamber, that's a key mission in what the government have laid down. Just responding to all the different complaints from constituents right across the country, from cross-party MPs, would you not feel that if the government came out and said there should be more regulation, is this something that TPI would welcome? Because in essence you're saying that you are waiting for the government to give more guidance on that.
Well, I don't think we're going to wait very long, but if we wind the clock back, the surge in complaints, and it has not been it has not been overwhelming, to be absolutely clear. We do receive complaints about members. We have a process, but generally service complaints should go to the Ombudsman. They're set up with the powers to award redress and put a consumer back into the place that they need to be. We don't have those powers. We can't do that. We can operate a disciplinary process for our members, and we can discipline them, but we can't remedy something that's gone wrong for the consumer. The surge, I would suggest, arrived with the surge in service charges when inflation bit, when energy costs bit, insurance costs bit, especially following the building safety crisis, and building safety costs bit as well. So the upsurge, I would say, is comparatively recent, and as we recognise that, we felt that we needed to put some truth and transparency around, and data around, levels of service charge. So we introduced the service charge index, and we collected data on that, and the next step then was to start measuring customer satisfaction. As I say, because membership is voluntary, we can't force members to do this yet, but we wanted to pilot that customer satisfaction survey, make sure that it works, make sure that it operates with the software, make sure that the data can cross-read across to the tenant satisfaction survey, and then a decision will need to be taken as to whether and when we mandate it. But I think we are merely weeks away from hopefully the Minister making his intentions clear, and we look forward to that.
We could just want to challenge on that one point, inflation. I've served as a councillor, as an assembly member. I think for the longest of time, service charge has been raised with me, and it's an issue that continues to be raised. by many leaseholders up and down the country. Going on to management of the Property Institute. My apologies, Yuan. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. To Ms. Riva and Mr. King, my colleague Mr. Dillon just asked you if you could tell us your profit margin made on management fees, and you both said that you could not. Do you know your overall profit margins for your whole company? You do? Yes. I assume you do. Yes. Where do you make profit other than from your management fees?
Where?
Yes, yeah.
Our primary function is residential property management. Right. That is our primary income is from management fees.
Right, so you make profit from your management fees.
Yes.
That's your primary source of profit.
Yes.
Is that the same
Correct.
case? But you don't know the margins on the profit that you make. Is that what you're saying?
I will come back to you on that particular point.
Okay. I have your accounts for the last financial years that you've had. You reported your accounts, and Mr. King, FirstPort has a loss in its last 2 financial years, for which there are accounts of 22 million and 25 million, respectively. Could you explain this loss? Is this from a loss of clients such as freeholders and leaseholders who have right to manage, who are leaving FirstPort?
Yeah. So I'd have to see what those figures are and where they came from.
These are your public accounts,
which is great, but it'd be good to obviously look at those and just confirm them. But
do you not file, Mr. King? Do you not have a responsibility as the CEO of your company for filing your accounts?
Yes, but it's the understanding where those figures. Just reading those figures is absolutely fine. But if I may answer. So we've made enormous investments into the business over the last 2 years, where we, and Andrew mentioned a number of the different points, whether it's health and safety, building safety, the new Ofgem requirement for the business. So we're investing a lot into the business. So yes, we have churned clients, as everyone does within that 5%, and that's always regrettable as a business, obviously. But we have invested an awful lot of money into the improvements of our business in new teams and new capabilities, the website that we've invested in, and communicating generally. So many of the aspects of what we've spoken about today need investment from the company to improve and make sure that we are fit for purpose for the future.
The experience that many of our residents come to us with is that they ask their local estate managers on their estates for transparency over invoices, over their service charges, and they are met time and time again with ignorance, professed ignorance. It's very difficult for us as representatives to see whether the people they're speaking to are simply not high level enough to know the details, or if they're purposefully trying to obfuscate the answers to those residents' questions. I feel like we're having the same experience with you on this committee. Yeah. You are the most senior people running your companies. You cannot tell us the details of the accounts that you have published and that have been sent to Companies House in your name, as well as the name of your directors who are legally responsible for those accounts.
Yeah. So I think the question was, what have you invested in? Where has that money gone? And we've invested millions in those new teams. So for my focus as...
So that's not the question. The question was, can you explain your massive operating losses for the last few financial years?
We've lost, obviously, clients do churn as much as we do win business as well. But we have invested an awful lot into the different teams that we need to invest in as regulation comes through. As a managing agent, one of the largest managing agents, we have to make sure that for us to be fit for purpose as an industry, not just for FirstPort, that we have the right people and the right teams. We've got training. I think I mentioned last time with training, we've invested almost 1,200 people have gone through TPI level 2. We're moving into TPI level 3. We're pushing everyone up. And I think that will become a requirement in the new regulation. So for us to get it right, and I think this is obviously an interesting question outside of FirstPort, of how will all of the members, all of the industry members who work in managing agency throughout the UK deal with the changes that are coming through with regulation. For us, we can invest more, we can have those teams in order to secure the portfolio and then ultimately make sure that we are ready for the regulation that comes through.
Okay, I feel like I'm not going to get an answer to the question of the collapse in turnover, but I will...
I think what my colleague was trying to ascertain was if the fall in profits reflects the fall in membership with the fall in residents, the fall in terms of people walking with their feet, the fall in people withholding to pay for their management fees because they're not receiving a service.
So, and I think my answer is we've invested
your investment doesn't explain your loss in revenue.
Well, because we do lose clients. Obviously, we lose clients. Everyone does lose clients.
Because you clarified that you make your profit from the management fees.
Yeah.
So we're trying to find out
So we then take the management fees that we have and invest that in areas of the business that we need to.
You're receiving far fewer management fees. I mean, in the last 2 financial years, your turnover has reduced by something like 30 times. So does that reflect the number of people who are leaving your services because they now have right to manage, or they're able to, or because freeholders and developers have decided to quit FirstPort?
So some have, and others haven't. And so, we've invested the money elsewhere in the business to make sure that we've improved. We've put where we were making profits elsewhere. We're now investing that into the teams that we need to invest in.
We're going to make progress.
We'll leave it on there. Thank you, Lewis, and then Lee and Chris.
Well, my goodness, I, to be honest with you, I don't really know where to... I've got lots of different questions. I don't really know where to start, to be honest with you. I'm a bit shocked that you haven't come today in front of us with some of the information that we've been asking for. But I've got one question I'll just start off with, just for clarity. So I'll take you back to the question that was raised by the chair about the situation you had in Manchester that was on BBC News. So that didn't cross your desk, Mr. King?
It would have crossed my desk. I'm absolutely sure it would have crossed my desk. My team would have dealt with it, as much as other questions do and other issues do come across my desk. So we have issues elsewhere in the country as well that we will be aware of, and we'll make sure the right people are working on it.
Absolutely. So sure, did it or did it not? I mean, this is a significant issue that's been on national news across the country. That's obviously negative for your company. Sure, it crossed your desk, isn't it? Did it or did it not cross your desk?
It would have crossed my desk as much as any other issue, because if there are issues like a lift or a resident or whatever the issue is, it will come through the correct channels in the business, and I will know whether we're dealing with it or not. Do I know intimately every single issue that is out there? I can't possibly know that.
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, a specific issue has happened that's made national media in the United Kingdom about your company. Did it cross your desk or not? I'm not asking about every specific issue we've raised today or every specific issue your company faces. This is an example of where it's made national media.
So again, yes, it would have done. It would have come across my desk as much as others come across my desk as well. So if there's an issue or it's reported in the press, or it doesn't have to be in the national news, if there's a serious issue at one of our developments anywhere in the country, from Scotland all the way down to Cornwall, that will more than likely come across my desk, whether it's in the news or not. It's not a or deciding factor if it's in the news or not. It's still a resident, even if it doesn't make the news. That will still come to me. I'll make sure the right team is dealing with it. Now, on those 6,000 developments and 350,000 homes that we manage, do I know everything every single day? I can't possibly know all the different details, which is why I will look into that specifically and come back, because they can be complex issues. But if there is an issue nationally that we're dealing with, we'll then speak to them.
I don't want you to take my time, because you're not filling me with confidence that you even know about that, and that's shocking, considering you're in charge of the organisation that made national news. One of my other colleagues asked you a question, and you both gave percentages, which doesn't really mean anything to people listening in or watching. How much, in real terms, as in terms of cash, so £10, £20, £100, did service charge go up on average last year? Not a percentage, you both gave a percentage earlier. How much in cash are we talking?
It's a very difficult question to answer, and Andrew may know more because he's done.
Hang on a minute. One second. You've come in front of a select committee of members of Parliament.
Yep.
You have significant issues, both of you, with your organisations. I haven't found one person that's happy with either of you across all of the properties that are managed in my constituency. And you cannot tell us, in monetary terms, how much service charges, on average, went up in your organisations last year.
So
were you briefed before you came here today?
Thank you. So service charges differ depending on the development that we manage. It's the same for Rendall and Rittner, that a service charge is for the particular services for a particular development. So depending on what is happening on that, and there have been some large rises, Andrew mentioned earlier, a 70% increase in utility bills. Now, that's something that will happen across the board and across the portfolio. But I think my answer is certainly we'll look in to see what that average across the portfolio is for you and come back to you on that.
So when you have your board meetings, no one presents you with an average figure. No one says, out of all of the properties we've managed this year, on average, service charges have gone up £100. I mean, that's nonsense. Are you actually hearing the answers you're giving us?
We do look at it's usually how it's usually quoted to us is usually in percentage terms because of the the variance in scale of service charge budgets. I'm more than happy to share that information with you.
The reason we asked is, again, going back to my earlier comment in terms of being briefed to attend and appear before this committee. My understanding is that your teams were asked in terms of the average service charge increase. Again, for a number of our residents and other residents and leaseholders and watching, a number of them will be receiving their new bills in the next few months.
Yes.
So it's really important that we see, on average, how much those costs are going up by. We fully appreciate there'll be additional costs, inflationary costs, some of the services you're providing, but to get a better picture of whether or not they are receiving value for money, we do need to see some of that detailed information.
I completely agree, and as I mentioned earlier, we looked at the subset of the 350 clients that we reported to you previously on, and we looked at the impact of, in particular for preparation of coming here today, we looked at the impact of the 2006 budgets that had been agreed. And for the 5-year period, we had seen an increase of 40%, which was compared to 42% for the previous 5-year period. And for the December budgets that we looked at in that subset, we'd seen a decrease of 1.3%.
I'm not going to get any answer out of you two. I think it's very disappointing, the fact you've come here really unprepared. But Andrew, lots of people join up to the property industry. Do you just take any one of these companies, or do you do actually any checks that any of them are any good?
We have 2 classes of membership. We have individual membership and we have company membership. And if you're referring to the company membership, we carry out a number of checks in terms of, do they have PI? Do they operate client accounts? Are those client accounts operated correctly in terms of name and where they're held? Are they trust accounts? So we carry out a number of due diligence checks, yes.
So have you ever turned anyone down from joining?
Yes, we have. Absolutely, we have, yes.
And what would they have to do to be turned down from joining?
We have suspended members as well in the past, correct?
We have suspended members in the past, and it could be for client account irregularities, for example.
But not like customer satisfaction or anything to do with service charges or anything like that at all?
I can think of one case where we not suspended a firm, where we removed a firm from membership, where there were poor behaviours. I shouldn't speak to an individual case, actually, because I can't remember the details. It was a little while ago. But yes, we have expelled members, and we have declined members from entry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back, Martin, on the point my colleague was making about the losses of the company. I mean, that's not sustainable for FirstPort. You can't afford to lose 25 million a year, and if you do, I'm sure you'll soon be out of business. But it makes me think that you're not out of business, despite making a £25 million loss. So have you got any contractors, either providing services that are financially linked to FirstPort or any of your parent companies that provide services to residents?
So do we use contractors?
That are linked to FirstPort financially or part of your parent company?
So we are part of a group, as you know. Most property companies are, and as Rendall and Rittner is. So we're a property company that has industries within it. So we do use other areas of the business, yes.
Of that £25 million loss, how much of that went back to the parent company and then sat as a loss on your books?
So again, I'd have to review the question on what that actually means and where the 25 million has come from.
If you could write to us, that'd be appreciated.
May I just...
I'm just mindful we need to move on, colleagues. Very quickly, Chris.
Just a very specific on that one, because you will say that you use you go for every project goes through a very specific bidding process. So in which case you would assume that you use an insurance company. So I think there's a parent company also has an insurance company, which.
What does that?
Your parent company also has an insurance company.
There is an insurance company, yes.
Which you use. I think what would be good to know is whether it looks like your FirstPort customers are more likely to get services from companies that are also owned by your parent company. Because if it is operating free market, if it is, then you would assume that it's the same across the industry. So FirstPort customers are no more likely to get an organisation that's connected to FirstPort. I think it would be good in your response to give an indication of whether that is the case, or for whatever reason, FirstPort customers are more likely to get services from companies that are financially connected to FirstPort.
So you're talking about KSI Insurance, I think, on this one. So they are a broker. They are FCA regulated, and I know this comes up each time, and I think all property groups have similar organisational elements. It is separate. It is FCA regulated. They broke insurance deals depending on each and every case within developments that we manage. On the whole, it'll then be the choice of the development to choose it or not. It is, as an insurance area, quite a difficult market to do, but they will go out, they'll get a minimum of 3 quotes, and that will be put for choice from a development to take or not. But I don't manage KSI, it is a FCA regulated.
Because the point is KSI made 1.8 million in profit in 2024, for example.
Thank you. Will.
Thanks, Florence. So Andrew, the TPI last year temporarily suspended FirstPort for administrative breaches. Was that a punishment to them? Did they save money on your membership fee or not? And how badly does a property management agent have to act to be fully expelled, not temporarily expelled?
FirstPort were suspended for a period of 3 months. And because it's a fixed term suspension, at the end of that, they are readmitted. The complaints are dealt with by referring to CEDA, the Centre for Dispute Resolution, and that is an independent organisation that works for a number of professional bodies, and what they do is they look at the facts of the case, conclude whether wrongdoing has happened, and then they make a recommendation as to sanction, which then goes up for action. So that was the recommendation of CEDA, the independent body. Is it a punishment? I suppose it is. It was widely reported, and it's been referenced several times today. So in that sense, I think it is. But also it's an opportunity for that firm to reflect and put right. And I have consent to speak on this. So there was a second suspension. The second suspension was suspended pending our audit team going in and looking at that particular aspect. The particular aspect was regarding handovers from FirstPort to other firms. And we were seeking evidence that processes have been put in place to prevent it happening again. Because members are voluntary, there's a limit to what we can do. If we expel somebody, they can just carry on trading. So the best outcome that we can do is to lead and pull and cajole. And we did that by saying, there is a suspension. You need to put your house in order and you need to do this. And I believe that we will continue to send our team in and look at those matters. If there are fresh cases, of course they could be brought forward. But again, that would go to CEDA. That would have to be handled by due process in the appropriate way.
When members are suspended by TPI, do they continue to pay their subscriptions? There's no further fine?
We don't have the power to fine. We do not return or reimburse any of the subscription. They're still paying. The suspension means that they have to remove their logo, they can no longer quote that they are a member of us. And of course it is made known, but we still give them access to our materials for guidance notes and other documents that will help them to come into compliance. There's no point pulling those services away from our firm.
Are you satisfied that all members are abiding by your code of conduct? And obviously the most recent suspension of FirstPort, as you said, was about when they were handing over properties to another potential property management. We've highlighted that we're concerned about FirstPort's finances, that they're not financially viable and that they're losing customers. Clearly, if they are struggling financially because they're losing customers, they're going to be reluctant to hand them over. Is that what you think as well, that they know people are walking out the door, they have this monopoly? If it was a normal business, if it was a supermarket, people would be shopping elsewhere, but because it's a monopoly, they hang on to them as long as possible?
I'll just pick up on the monopoly piece, if I may. We're 4.5% of the market. So I've heard this before, that FirstPort is a monopoly or the largest. We're 4.5% of the market only, which isn't, as described, a monopoly.
I appreciate you're the largest single provider of property management services, aren't you, in the country?
Well, so the Adivo Group is, not ours, but we're the largest independent.
Largest independent.
Yeah.
And I think when we highlight monopoly, I can decide this evening, do I go to Tesco or Asda to buy my food shopping, and so can our constituents. Our constituents, I'm afraid to say, Martin, are stuck with FirstPort for the foreseeable future. I think that's the concern about monopoly. Sorry, Andrew.
I'm sorry, that turned into a conversation. Could you restate the first part of your question so I can deal with it directly?
We're concerned that FirstPort isn't a financially viable business because they're losing £20 million. Part of that is because leaseholders, freeholders are seeking right to management when they can and leaving. You've done a suspension of FirstPort because they're not handing over properties properly. Do you believe that's part of their game to stay in the market as long as possible?
I think that would be conjecture. We have to deal with matters of fact. We have a standard for handing over estates. If they don't meet the standard, whether it is for that or other reasons, perhaps they've lost information, perhaps whatever it may be, the fact of the matter is that handover has not happened as it should do. I don't think I can go into conjecture as to why that is, but it is a fact that it was a problem and that leaseholders were not served.
Thank you. I appreciate. I'm going to hand over to Chris to talk about regulations going forward. Obviously, what's been highlighted in this conversation is the current self-regulation. I think it's fair to say doesn't work. I think we're all of the mindset that we need property managing agents to be regulated rather than the Wild West situation we've got. I'm afraid what we've heard today almost worries me for constituents, but worries me for your investors. I would have no confidence if I was a constituent as a client or an investor either. I suppose that's where we're of the mindset we need to properly regulate property managing agents.
Just want to bring Andrew in quickly, and then Chris will finish this section.
Thank you, Chair. I will be quick, but I think this is really important. So we've just learned, the committee, that FirstPort have twice been suspended. Indeed. Martin, question for you. We're on the record. There's an old saying, 3 strikes and you're out. Would you take personal responsibility if you were referred to for a third time, as FirstPort to the TPI? Would you consider your position?
So it's only one time that we've been suspended, which was March last year, not twice. But we then had the investigation from TPI, and some elements of that investigation came back as exemplary processes. So we're very pleased with that. Now, TPI is a voluntary organisation that we are members on and have been supportive of that area for a long period of time. We've also been, for the last 10 years, pro more regulation of the industry. So if the intimation here is that more regulation needs to be put in place for managing agents, we've always said, when Lord Best 10 years ago mentioned this, we said yes. So now what that looks like is obviously not up to us, and whether that sits within a TPI organisation or whether that's a wholly separate organisation that's organised by government. I don't know the answer to that, but there are many companies that do managing estate management and block management in the UK, thousands, of which, yes, we represent a couple of the largest groups in that area. But the more regulation that is in place that regulates the process can only benefit the residents that are there.
May I add?
Very quickly.
We are also advocates of regulation. Rendall and Rittner are accredited and voluntarily regulated by the RICS and have been for 20 years. We believe that regulation and accreditations in the other bodies that we are working with has helped shape our business and really making sure that we strive for continuous improvement. Now, we do know there are areas where we do need to improve, and we've talked about some of those today. But I just wanted to state on record that we are also advocates for regulation.
Brilliant, thank you. Just pushing this way, Mr. King, you've obviously seen a suspension. Do you think you are now meeting good practice for that handover process?
So it's an ongoing. So yes, we've had the investigation by TPI. They've looked at all of the processes that we have in place. There were processes that, in that case, I think we were outside a 30-day window to hand over some details. That's, in a way, relatively common. There are delays that happen. We were suspended for 3 months, and we continue to make those improvements across the board. So there are delays in handovers that we are in place at the moment, and there are complex areas that we and developments that we do. But the processes we have in place are now much better than they were.
The Waterways estate in Milton Keynes it was handed over to Neil Douglas on the 1st of September 2025. As part of that takeover process, the new management company has described it as a shambles. They said they weren't given any information when they took over from FirstPort. FirstPort stated they couldn't release any money as the accounts were not completed. The accounts should have been completed after 3 months. We are now longer than 3 months. When can they expect those accounts to be completed?
I'll have to look into see those accounts and have a look at them. There are many different reasons why handovers are delayed for all sorts of different reasons. It's a complex process to hand over an estate in good order to a new managing agent.
Yeah. Fairfield's estate in Milton Keynes was also handed over from FirstPort. Estate management company went over to another one in September 2023. They still have not received accounts from 2021 and 2022. Is that acceptable length of time?
So it's not an acceptable length of time. And again, I'd have to look into why those delays are there. I don't know. There are often reasons why there are delays. But in all of the examples that we're pulling out, as I said before, within the 5% of the area of our portfolio that we get wrong, we have to make improvements. And this is potentially one area. So I'd have to look into the independent stories. But if the question is, are the processes improved? Yes, they are.
Mr. Bulmer, do you think those stories are acceptable? And if they're still occurring, do you think that FirstPort are meeting their requirements to be a member of the TPI?
Is it acceptable? No. That's clear and simple. If there are still occurrences, that is not acceptable. There is a process for bringing that forward to us, and we can put that again through CEDA and through due process. There is a due process for this.
And look, I think the point my committee colleague was getting at was that this is arguably an anti-competition policy. Ultimately, if residents have gone through that process of trying to move to another company, and the former company is making it very, very difficult for that transition process to happen, intentionally or unintentionally, that is an anti-competition policy. Do you think that on this very specific case with this specific company, the Competition Markets Authority should now be investigating whether this is an anti-competition element that is influencing the market?
I simply cannot safely enter into conjecture as to the motivations or why that has happened. They've not hit the standard. They should have hit the standard. That is a binary thing. Is it a tactic to try and keep hold of estates? I have to say I'd struggle to see that there'd be much point, because you've kind of lost them anyway.
Yep. At the very least, there's no incentive.
Whether it is instead, forgive me, whether it is instead ineptitude or poor, or a problem with accounting, I simply do not know, and it would be unsafe of me to enter into conjecture.
It would be an incentive in the sense that if this happened multiple times, then a new company would be more resistant to take on a FirstPort property in future transactions, because they would know that is a faffy process, a difficult process. It leads to complications, which then could upset the whole market.
I think in terms of cause and motivation, I'd have to direct your questions to Martin.
There is
in terms of a new company,
Yeah.
in terms of a new company, I think a new company would. I don't think they would be deterred. I think they would be irritated.
So if I may, there's no benefit to FirstPort for delays in handing over. If residents choose to move to a different managing agent, and we do this a number of times, and obviously an example or two examples out of the number that
One
we do.
constituency.
So if we have an example in this point, then it is obviously not good that there are delays. I don't know the reason that there are delays. Normally there are reasons why there are delays, and I'll look into the delays for you and understand what they are. Is there a benefit for upsetting residents for delaying handover? There is not a benefit. We would rather hand over developments in good order and in good time than being, as we were last March, suspended by TPI, or upsetting residents as they move across, or upsetting managing agents. This also, as we take on sites from other managing agents, does happen to us as well. So it's not a FirstPort-laden example. The industry needs to get better at all sorts of different things, of which this occurs to us as well.
Mr. Bulmer, I think you've sort of implied the answer to this already, but we've obviously got the draft Common Hold and Leasehold Bill going through, or draft legislation which this committee will be looking at. Do you think that legislation should include measures for proper regulation of this industry and a statutory regulator to be created?
There's two parts to that. The statutory bit I will come to in a moment. We were disappointed that measures were not brought forward. We were hoping to see it. There is a question mark over the timing, in that the consultation was in Q3 of last year, required analysis and then legislation to be drafted. So we might imagine that the necessary measures, we hope the necessary measures are in draft at the moment, and will catch up with this bill as it makes its way, as it makes its progress. But yes, strongly, we have campaigned for 10 years plus. I was on Law Best Working Group. We absolutely support recommendations for a statutory regulator. The consultation did not include a statutory regulator. Instead, it moved to the DPB model, which came as a little bit of a surprise to us. But it is for the Minister to decide, and then we will support it in any which way we can.
Do you think this should be a new organisation that's set up, or do you think it's something that the TPI or another current organisation should have the responsibility for taking on?
The proposal, the preferred option in the consultation, was for multiple DPBs. So there would need to be some forum. I will say nothing more than that. In terms of, is it a vehicle, is it a forum? Choose your own word to describe an entity. That entity would need to exist to ensure that there was no arbitrage between the DPBs as they carried out their duties. So enforcement was consistent, standards were consistent, and one DPB couldn't be played off against another. So in that sense, there would need to be a thing, and we would expect that thing to have plenty of leaseholder scrutiny and public scrutiny.
What punishments do you think should be in place, or disciplinary action should happen to companies that fail to meet the requirements that should be expected of the industry?
I'm not sure that we are yet listing out what those punishments should be, but in extremis, an individual or a firm that is unsafe and causing harm ultimately should be able to be stopped from practice, and that is the gap at the moment.
And Mr. King, how likely do you think it is that, based on what we've all heard today, your current performance would satisfy a statutory regulator? And if the answer to that question is probably no, are you confident that you'd be able to reach a point where you could?
I think it's an interesting question, and I bring us back to what I said before. We've always been pro-regulation. And if I may also, because I know there's obviously a focus on FirstPort in this questioning, I still have to bring us back to the performance figures that I have shared with you and continue to share with you, that if FirstPort is being described collectively as something that should be investigated, as you mentioned, or should be feared of a regulator, when I look at our portfolio and our standards, that complaints that come to us, so I appreciate you get constituent conversations, and when you ask for examples about FirstPort, negative examples, then that is obviously a shame. But I have to bring us back to the figures that we have, the capability of FirstPort, that 95% of our portfolio is static and is well run and is managed. I can show the reduction in complaints, I can show all of that to you, and more than willing, because we already do, then yes, we would welcome a regulator, and we've always said we would welcome that regulator. So if there's a line in the sand for how the industry needs to perform, if our figures of how our call rates are, our complaint rates, how many customers use our database and their website to get communication, our customer satisfaction, I'm happy to use our figure as that benchmark. Now, is there a collective belief that FirstPort is systemically a monopoly or behaves poorly? If it behaves poorly, that's not the case.
I think the monopoly thing is a bit of a side joke. The problem is, as we've just said, I think the difficulty in sacking you when you're not doing a good enough job.
So there is no
we can't
difference.
just move. Our residents can't just move. It's always going to be more resistance, right, than just moving from Tesco's to Sainsbury's because of all of the nuances of the industry. But it's why I'm so worried about this handover process and the fact that we don't seem to see improvements. Because that, I think, I'm really, really worried is, even if you're not a monopoly, is leading to a lack of competitive behaviour. And ultimately, it is the fact that it is so hard to sack people in the industry that drives the low standards that we're then all talking about. This is the problem that needs fixing.
So interesting. I think the important point of what you just said is that the industry, not just FirstPort, how things are done, whether it's a leasehold, common hold, the complexity of our industry does lead to complexity and delays, where if the intimation is that in some way it is FirstPort that is doing something wrong, it is not. It is the industry is complex, hence the reason regulation and legislation is being put through, which is we're obviously waiting for and seeing where that goes. But going back to a previous question you had, would we welcome regulation? We have always welcomed regulation.
Why do you need regulation to do the right thing? It's a case of both you and Catherine have said you want to see regulation, you welcome regulation. You should be doing the right thing by your customers, residents who are paying extortionate rates. They see their charges going up month on month. A number of them are going to receive new bills for service charges when the new financial year starts in 2 months' time. It's a case of, you mentioned, 90% of your properties are being managed well. The 5%, where's the focus to try and get them right? Complaints keep coming. FirstPort keeps being mentioned in the news. So obviously something is going very wrong.
And it is, and I think I've mentioned it a number of times, that there is a collective belief that FirstPort is that brand that needs to be focused on to improve an entire industry.
Martin, in my inbox,
I can show
the complaints are about FirstPort. They're not about other management agents within my constituency. And it's across multiple schemes. It's not just one scheme.
Yeah,
and the failure rests with your organisation, not with the sector.
And it'd be so what I do find in many ways interesting, how the complaints are then generated. So, as we mentioned earlier, we will go out to all of our customers. So I think you've agreed that that's fair to go out. We go out to all of our customers and say good or bad. And what comes back, and we measure all of this, and all of this I'm more than happy to share. If the question is, what is bad about your managing agent, then that obviously skews the results for that. I will look at every single case that has been brought up here. I have mentioned already that MP complaints have gone from 395 down to 90. And I've mentioned that we've got 70,000 less complaints. These are stats that we're sharing with you. We share every quarter. We're the only company that does that. And I'm happy if that becomes a benchmark for the industry. Now, we've always welcomed regulation because I think it's becoming a much more complex industry that needs qualified people.
It does. So if we, let's look at a situation in that we do our work as a committee. We scrutinise the draft bill. And if there's a process for common hold to be the usual tenor, do you think FirstPort residents will choose to stay with FirstPort or go to a common hold system?
I think they have choice already in what they do. So we are tenure agnostic.
We've argued that the choice is very limited because it's very hard for them to move.
As an industry. So it is difficult, hence regulation, as I understand it, that if it is hard for a resident or a leaseholder or anyone within the industry to have more choice, that is the purpose of, or one of the purposes of the regulation that's been in train for the last 10 years. I think for us, and obviously not speaking for the whole industry, but for us, we've always been supportive of that change, because it is becoming a more complex industry that needs more qualified individuals in it, and of which we are absolutely on side with. And I've shared figures of all the training that we're doing in conjunction with TPI to make sure we have the right people in our company delivering the right levels of service.
Thank you. State charges, private estates. You ran quickly.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Many of my residents in new build estates, including freeholders and leaseholders alike, say that they have had informal residents associations conversations about trying to leave their current property manager, but they cannot because they have embedded management arrangements in their property deeds, which essentially locks them into their existing property agents. The government's currently consulting on options to reduce the prevalence of these arrangements. Mr. Bulmer, what is the prevalence of these arrangements across the states in general?
I have no firm data. I will simply say too high. There is a time and a place for these arrangements in large, complex urban redevelopment schemes or something like that, where sometimes there's really no option. But far too often, relatively simple estates of houses are end up having these management arrangements created for what amounts to a couple of grass strips and a street light and a gully, and they're not adopted by the local authority. The developer has no great incentive to fight the local authority. The local authority doesn't want it, and the simple answer is to vest the freehold into a management company, which then the homeowners have to pay for. And it can become a nonsense, because to run a limited company incurs costs. The insurance, the due diligence, the filing of the accounts, somebody has to do all of that. And then the amount of money which is actually spent in boots on the ground checking or cutting the grass or sucking that gully is relatively small. So the administration costs can be disproportionate to what you're getting. We would strongly support any move that encourages local authorities to adopt those arrangements. The residents are already paying a council tax, they're not getting a discount from that, and to do away with as many of these as we could do.
Ms. Riva, Mr. King, would you welcome the government's new legislation if it did ban such embedded agreements? Yes, no?
Yes, we do. We don't actually have any embedded management agreements and would not take on such arrangements.
Thank you. And Mr. King?
And if that happens, then we would work with that. We would welcome the changes that are coming through.
You do have embedded management agreements?
We do, yeah.
And in advance of that change, if residents in those managed estates were to agree now, before the new legislation is brought forward, to leave FirstPort or for the local authority to adopt their estates, would you be willing to accept that?
I think at the moment the way it is written is a legal process that we are embedded into that. So it's not as easy as me saying I would like to do that or not like to do that. That is how it is. But if that changes in the future, if the legislation changes that, then we will have to obviously do that.
Given that you have the right to exit these agreements right now as the managing agent, would you be willing to exercise that right if your residents wanted?
I would have to check but each development would have to check the legals for that. So,
but if you had legal right as the person in the contract with the freeholder to exit that arrangement, in those cases, would you be willing to let residents have their say and local authorities have their say?
So if the residents fit the criteria of leaving, if all of the areas that are percentages are required to leave, then there's no reason why we wouldn't leave if everything is done correctly.
Okay.
If that changes in the future, then again we would have to go with that tenure.
Thank you. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a brief question on the draft common hold and leasehold reform bill, but Martin, I just have to go back to an exchange 5 or so minutes ago, because you are effectively coming here to make the case that the problem is with the industry and the complexity with the industry, but not with FirstPort. Now, you may not agree with that characterisation, but that's what I've come across. That's what's come through to me today. And about 5 minutes ago, you said to Chris, this is not about FirstPort with regarding to handover delays, but it literally is about FirstPort, because we were hearing from Andrew just 15 minutes earlier that he's been undertaking an investigation into FirstPort on that precise subject. So I just want to put that on the record, and I hope that you engage with the reality of there are issues that are specific to FirstPort, not just the sector.
Well, I think I think throughout this process and in the last 2 years, I've definitely lent in and understood the issues that are being put forward. FirstPort's been around for 40 years, and we've been surrendered, to the best of my knowledge, once. So in regards to, are we doing the right thing? Are we open? Do we liaise with our trade bodies? Do we come in and meet members of Parliament? Do we take advice? Are we making enormous change? Are we probably the most transparent company publishing our results? The answer to that is yes. So none of what I've said today is anything other than we are making those changes. If there are things wrong, we are doing it. We have the statistics that show the improvements over the last 2 years. We publish that and send them out to you. Now, so at some point when I look at, yes, we have an issue somewhere and we need to change it, absolutely we will get after that and make those changes. But as a business, we are improving across the statistics that I agreed to do 2 years ago, and we publish those and send those out to this body and others.
Okay. On the draft bill, to Martin and Catherine, I'm conscious we're running over, so a really simple question. At this stage, have you been lobbying the department to seek any specific policy changes to the draft bill? And considering the position both of your companies are in, do you think it's appropriate that you do so at this stage?
We, in terms of the draft bill, obviously we have reviewed that. We very much would like to see regulation in there, and also the licensing of individual property managers. As I mentioned earlier, we have found regulation through RICS really important and help shape and drive our business, but also our accreditations through other bodies such as the British Safety Council, Investors in People, and the TPI and TPO. So we believe regulation is required within the industry to drive service standards, but also to increase and improve the perception of the industry so that we can attract new talent and retain staff within the industry. Regulation really needs to be independent, and it needs to be obviously proportionate, but I think most of all it needs to be credible in the eyes of leaseholders and obviously residents as a whole, and that's why we would very much welcome that to be included.
Extremely similar to that. I think one of the bits that I would add is we thought there needs to be some more complexity, actually. It was a bit of an oversimplification in accounts, for instance, in complex developments, and that didn't showcase through some of the work that was done. So we've already gone back and we've offered our examples on all sorts of different areas of it. So, but we're looking at that draft bill now, and we'll go back into consultation period.
Thank you. Just finally, I'm mindful of time. I just wanted to get clarity, because obviously if how both your businesses will adapt to the introduction of common hold, because in essence you could be competing with residents, they'll have more of a choice. You could be competing with freeholders, developers. Of the properties both managed with FirstPort and Rendall and Rittner, how many are right to manage properties and how many are leasehold owns? And where those leaseholders are owning them, do any of them choose to your services in terms of your managing agent services?
So approximately 2/3 of we have around 650 clients. Approximately 2/3 of those clients are companies that are leaseholder controlled, so whether they be right to management companies or similar bodies. So our contracts are typically for 1 year, so that residents can choose who they wish to use as their managing agent.
We're about 1/3 of our portfolio, and again we run the normal 12-month contract as well.
And just for clarity, in the letter you sent to us, Martin, very helpful, just on the last paragraph you mentioned you support the need for professional governance on common hold associations. Just wanted to know where FirstPort had seen that there would be an introduction of professional common hold associations.
I think as common hold becomes, it becomes a tenure or more prevalent tenure, the responsibility for that bill, the common hold responsibility will pass to that board, the directors of a development that have taken on those responsibilities. So making sure that they understand what responsibilities they're taking on, what training they may require. It is an important...
Would FirstPort be bidding for those?
So we're putting together a training package. We manage about 1,800 RMCs already. And actually being able to train directors and understand what their responsibilities will be in the future is going to be very important.
Would you not think that some of those directors would think your current portfolio, you're struggling to manage and understand the business, you're currently struggling to respond to residents in a timely manner,
No, and again, I'll send the figures again if I need to about how we're responding to customers, how we're answering queries, how we are being very open in regards to how we are running our business and transparent. So I'm, again, more than happy to share that, but our confidence with the clients that we have remains, our capability remains, and I can obviously direct again to the figures to everyone on the committee whenever you wish.
Okay, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. 2 comments. About 60% of the estates that our members manage generally are resident controlled. Not all of those own their own freehold. Some of them do, some of them don't. But that is, and in the building safety regulator, about 50% of the buildings which are registered with the building safety regulator, private buildings, are RMC controlled as well. So that might give you a little bit of a feel for where the wider market is. My second comment will simply be on regulation. We've heard the word regulation used a couple of times. Just to be very clear, there is no regulator for this sector. Regulation is not happening. Regulation is about systemic control. Systemic collection of data, systemic understanding of harms and failures, and it's also about being able to take away a license to practice, and there is no entity that is doing that at the moment. So we operate a disciplinary process, and we're transparent that we're not a regulator, we operate disciplinary. What is required is a regulator for systemic oversight and the license to practice.
And I think, you've all agreed that you agree with Lord Best. We on the committee agree with Lord Best as well in terms of having a regulator. Just to thank you all for coming before the committee this morning. I think this is an issue that will continue to fill our inboxes as parliamentarians. This is an issue that's really important. And I think most importantly, it's looking at the key element of common hold, where eventually we will see residents being able to appoint their own managing agent or choose to manage it themselves. But thank you very much for coming before the committee. I think there are some items that we would appreciate you writing to us with fuller explanations. Order.